I've been hearing from a lot of people that they're using the recordings. I haven't looked at the numbers on the YouTube channel, but people are referencing things that are being said. So, and they're really, people have other commitments as well. So I'm really happy that everybody is okay with us recording it and making it available for other folks who can't be here with us. So welcome to session 6, and tonight's going to be a very informal conversation, and I hope we're going to really mine the knowledge of the group and kind of the personal practices of the group. And we're going to explore creativity and well-being in kind of a deeper discussion, I hope, kind of about your practices, and which I think is always something kind of inspirational. But we'll get into that. First, let me give us an overview of where we've been and where we're headed. So we had the Year of the Artist strategy kickoff, and we talked about building a learning community and what that means and how we can have fun and explore and experiment together and do it thoughtfully. And then we talked about the artist at the table, what it means to be at the table, what the role of an artist can be in the community. And not that, we talked about the spectrum of the kind of projects you can do. You can do the very personal project that is self-driven, that you apply, say, on a wall in a community. And then there's the other end of the spectrum, which is really focused on community-based projects where you're facilitating a community in the development of a project. And both are great, and we've got resources for both kinds of projects. I want to emphasize that. I know we're talking a lot about community development, and it's part of like our real interest in this Year of the City, or the Year of the Artist in the City. So I do want to keep exploring that, but I don't want you to feel like you have to run a community-based project. There are things that you can do that, you can write a symphony and have it performed publicly, and that can do good in the community, especially when you attach a talk back or a conversation around it. So we talked about that, and then tonight, that whole series was really based on Americans for the Arts, the artists at the community development table. And then tonight we're going to talk about filling your cup, and just kind of talk about that creativity, the connection with wellness, and how that plays out in your life, the role of other things that fill your cup and kind of make you more able to be out in the world. And we're at a little bit of a transition point. Tonight we're going to talk about 2 of the Artist in Residence projects. We've got 2 guests here, Wayne Leftwich and Mary Jo Fossier, and we'll introduce them as we dive into their projects. But we're really happy that they're here. And again, like I said, we're in a learning community. So I am learning with each step of this as well. So I've never done this before. And I hope we're learning as the city how to better engage not only with artists, but with residents and citizens who want to affect change. And then, so I've got 2 kind of areas that I'm thinking now that we might be headed next. One is, I'm going to start asking folks if they're starting to feel more comfortable being in person. If we get to a place where we feel comfortable getting together in person, we can do some more hands-on activities, some more interactive activities. We've got a program from Springboard for the Arts called the Handbook for Artists Working in Community. And it is a little more, it's like the next step of digging in. I said we were going to start high level and then go a little bit deeper. And that might be a good next step. And we can easily find a place in the community and do a few weeks of that. Additionally, I've got this book that I read. I'm always reading something. Catherine knows that. Catherine's always reading something too. This book that I read this weekend, and I am really interested. Another thing I do is organize a thing called Book City Roanoke, where we do community reads. And in 2017, we did a read of Dar Williams, the folk musician. She wrote a book, What I Found in 1,000 Towns. And we did a 10-week reading of this week by week, section by section of the book, and we had each section hosted by a different partner. And one session focused on the arts in the community, one focused on local foods. And it was a really fun project. And since then, we continued for the last 5 years now doing book reads, and a lot of the focus has been on equity and anti-racism. And we've had a great group who is kind of eager to read another book. And we've been calling that effort the Change Academy. And so now I'm kind of interested in what's the connection between arts and creativity in the community. And of course, we've already been talking about equity and making sure our voices are heard in the community, and that we are engaging in a different way and asking questions, not doing things the way we've always done them, but taking a creative approach to it and looking at what's possible. So this book is by this guy, Spud Marshall. It's called Designing Creative Communities. Your town is your canvas. Learn how to make your mark. And it's self-published, and the guy's really doing it to get his consulting out there. But it's the best book I found so far that's very kind of how-to. And a lot of his examples, he's in State College, Pennsylvania, and most of his examples are about trying to create a space for arts, advocating for arts-based interventions in the community. And it's very much, point for point, like things that we can focus on. So just so you know, those are two directions that I think we might be heading. I've been meeting with Dolores down at the bookstore downtown at Book No Further, and even though this is published by Amazon, and one of my questions was like, why would you publish something through Amazon if you're advocating for a strong local economy or you're engaging in your community? But Dolores reached out to him immediately, and he immediately made it possible so that she can sell it and still make her 40 to 50% that they have to make in an independent bookstore. So far he seems like he's pretty easy to work with that way. So keep an eye out for that, and I'll probably go ahead and add this into our resources page. So those are the two. That's where we're headed. It's where we've been and where we're headed. And then tonight, I want to call for reflections and learnings and any inspirations again, like we always do. We'll take a few of those. Then we'll have our discussion. We're reminding our collective wisdom. And then we'll hear from Mary Jo Fossier with Sister Cities of Roanoke Valley Sister Cities. And then we'll hear from Wayne Lefwich, the Complete Streets effort in the city, which I think you'll be interested in both of those. Then we'll talk about some updates, and we'll do a little catch-up Q&A, and we'll be done for the evening. And I hope that'll kind of all happen within the hour. So again, with the Year of the Artist, we're advancing community goals, integrating artists and civic problem solving, exploring and experimenting. We're paying artists. We're strengthening our network together, connecting with each other and connecting with others in the community. We're having fun and playing, and then we're building a learning community as we're doing that. So any inspirations, and I'll remind us that we've got if you look down at the bottom, you've got I'll remind us, there's a reactions tool, or should be. I might not be able to see it right now. Do you see it? Does anybody see it? Where you raise your hand? Okay, as long as you see it. Yeah, Dan sees it. Yeah, thanks, Megan. All right, Wayne sees it. Okay, so you can use a reaction tool and raise your hand if you've got a reflection or a learning. We're a pretty small group, but it's still probably good to do that so that we're not over talking each other. So anybody have anything happen over the past week that they want to share with us, or any reflections on our last conversations? I did really well, but there would be a big long space there. So I'm to be commended. But that's all right. I'm sure as we get the conversation. Oh, Catherine, you're on mute.
But I just want to say I'm still making, I'm kind of getting out a little bit more. And when I do see people and tell them about this big project and how exciting it is and what a good thing it is, I still have this barrier where people just say, I'm not an artist. It's not about me, and I'm really trying really hard to kind of individually twist people's arms to find out about it. And I have had people tell me that they have gone to the meetings, they've seen the videos, they're able to kind of catch up. But I think that is such a huge stumbling block that I'm still kind of a little challenged. I'm reflecting on how do we get the point across. And I know we've got a lot of cool things coming up with Roanoke and with the Taubman and all the celebration of all the arts. And that's a great way to kind of chip away at that. But for individuals who don't see themselves as painters or sculptors, like that very narrow idea of what it means to be an artist, it's kind of my personal challenge to try to get a few more musicians and dancers and videographers and pinball machine operators, just people who are just doing really creative different things to get on board with this.
Yeah, we talked after one session, about maybe we need to explore some creative, marketing or campaign strategies around that. And that would be a terrific application for an Art Matters grant. We're talking about inclusion and making sure everybody feels that they can participate and they can align their passions and creativity and interests with community good. So I would think that something like that would be a terrific project that we could actually fund through this. And we can shift the way we talk about things as well. I did see I think it was a Brene Brown quote. Was it Brene, or maybe Elizabeth Gilbert, one of those. And it was, there aren't creative people and non-creative people. They're just people. And these are creativity is something we all have, and like I said, it'd be great to live in a community where everybody knows what kind of the role creativity plays in their life and the role the arts play in their life. Susan.
I wanted to mention that I just found an article yesterday talking about rebooting your brain after this pandemic, everybody being under constant stress. And one of the items that they listed was to do some good stressors. It talks about learning a musical instrument, taking a course that'll help you be better at work. But, it was learning a particular dance, it was that artistic kind of thing that maybe we as a community need as a whole. So I thought I would put that out there, that we're not just doing something small. We can be doing something to rebuild our whole community that way.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you, Susan. That's exactly what we were kind of imagining with these Art Matters grants. What are the things that, and Catherine had been, I can remember talking to Catherine maybe outdoors at the farmer's market about her puppet show. And this was maybe a year and a half ago, about how, her thinking. Well, Catherine, what was your thinking around the puppet show?
Yeah, I think if you can hear me now. So I think it was more just really not having an agenda, not having a big message or any lesson, just fun, something that was just goofy and fun and made you feel happy to be together in a group, to just kind of like reboot our sense of joy, our sense of happiness without a lot of like any other agenda, so maybe doing, I don't know. So I'm really excited that seems to be I have so many ideas, but I think finding a way to do that in a way that just brings older people, kids, parents, just something fun and unexpected. So that's kind of what I think that conversation was about. As you recall, I have always more ideas than time, but sometimes and I appreciate this opportunity to just see what ideas seem to have like some staying power. Like this is a good idea, rather than some of my other ideas that are a little bit more ridiculous.
Well, even if they seem ridiculous on the surface, that's the beauty of it. And yeah. I like Susan's word, important. And there's the equity manifesto that came out of Policy Link in Oakland, and maybe about 10 or 11 years ago. And I love the document, but one of the things I really love about it is there's a line in it that just says what we do locally really matters. It can feel small, but the way we're interacting with our neighbors and the way we're deploying our skills and connecting can make all the difference in the world. And what we're doing here in Roanoke can be every bit as important as what's happening in a much larger city, or at the national level. Okay, so we're here, we're to our question. And let's go ahead and use the chat just so that we create a list. Because I do get a record of the chat and I love having the list. I looked back at some the other day. So pull the chat up and let me ask you, what fills your cup? What activities bring you energy and restore you? And I'll give you a few minutes to, not a few minutes, but maybe a minute to type into that and we'll get a list going. All right, and as you're doing that, I will send out the information on the book. I'll put that in our update when I send out the link to the recording this week and the link for next week, and make sure you have that. And all right, so walking in wild nature, photographing new subjects, gardening, cooking, painting, singing, walking around downtown, seeing friends going to the art museum, learning, drawing, listening to music, making things. So lots of creative cup filling here. So the act of creativity in itself. Quiet time to reflect and work on projects. I I identify with that. Yeah. Hiking, drawing, cooking, making art, Dan says, even if nobody sees it. Richard says, walking the dog and listening listening to podcasts. I have a good picture of that right now. Weekly hikes with my partner, doodling at work between busy calls, walking my dogs in the park, sewing projects, teaching, being around my students and sharing a good laugh with them. Wow. Oh, Gabby, I want you as a teacher. Walking, learning new things, exploring live music, reading and enjoying nature. So yeah, we're in such a great spot for nature. I thought that was interesting during the pandemic, how it was sad they had to close the Greenway. I understood it because a couple times I felt we none of us really knew what was happening, and they did have some records of some you know people running behind each other and catching COVID. But it was tough. But fortunately, we have so much outdoors that we could get out to. Skateboarding and hiking, dancing, playing music, writing, rehearsals, creating any kind of art, music, being in nature. Barbara says, creating, thinking, solving creative problems, enjoying nature when I'm working outside, listening to music while I work. Yoga. Yeah, I just had a yoga session just before this, and I feel great now. I can go much longer tonight because I did that. Yeah, well, thank you everybody for sharing. Any observations on that list? I think Mike's making music right now. Yes.
I'm scoring you as you talk.
Oh, wow.
Atlanta,
Wow.
Florida.
I've never had a soundtrack before. I love it.
Well, it's just for me right now, pal.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's great. I do. You see people in meetings, kind of knitting or doing something with their hands, and that's part of like I have to have a pen in my hand. I have to be kind of to engage and connect a different part of my brain. Yeah, yeah. Okay. So, does anybody have a story about when they forgot to fill their cup? Or how about how you learned the best way to fill your cup? What you need? Let me go back to the chat and see if anybody puts anything in the chat. Sometimes I forget to look at it. Lucy.
So I feel like I forget to fill my cup daily, if not weekly or just all the time. It's just been so stressful. I get told by my partner I just need to leave the house and go in nature. Like I'm banished from the house and then I go and walk in the park for like 20 minutes and it's okay. Or I have a flower garden in the summers. And so even if I just take a few pictures of bees in flowers, that kind of fills me back up. But it's a daily thing of having to remember to fill up that cup, or else I just kind of grumble around and can't manage work or anything actually. So daily.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky to have my partner to remind me to fill up.
Yeah, and it's great that you can listen and
Sometimes
and do it, because sometimes, I can see my reaction sometimes being, don't tell me what to do. That's just another thing. Now you're just adding another thing to my list.
Yeah, no, you're out of here.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a boss once who would tell me I need to go for a run. She said, you need to go for a run. I'm like, okay, I'll do that. And she was right. I felt so much better when I'd come back.
Yeah.
How about creativity and your, let's see, somebody gets kicked out of the house and told to go on a mini vacation about every other month because I regularly forget to fill my cup. It's hard to balance all the tasks involved with parenting young children. Yeah, I mean, everybody is expected to do so much now. Even, it's tax time. And I'm like, I've got to be an expert in taxes. I've got to understand all of this on top of everything else. Yeah. All right. So how about connections with creativity? Does anybody have, I heard nature and gardening and writing and reading and exercise. Yeah, where do you have your most creative thoughts? The nice thing is there no right answers or wrong answers to these. They're just answers. Does anybody have a really, Winnie the Pooh had a thoughtful spot? Does anybody have a creative spot?
Since I've moved to this area, this whole town is a surprise to me. There's always some weird thing. You come around the corner, it's like, Jesus Christ, look at that. And that more than anything else has been seems to be a nice spark throughout. But I can't really name like one particular spot. Otherwise, it comes down to, for me anyway, whenever I'm talking in a position where I can talk to myself, because that's as a writer, that's where I end up going. But I'm by myself a lot of the time, so I guess I can't pick a particular spot.
Yeah.
But yeah, this town, in terms of little sparks of inspiration, is all over the place. Just going to, what was it? What's the brewery that's got all the orange and brown murals on the wall and have
Golden Cactus?
No, it's not that one.
Um,
it's I don't know where, I can't think of it.
Parkway?
Yeah, Parkway Brewery. First time I went there and just walked into the place, it was like going, I ain't in Iowa anymore. It's different, and it's a real delight. So,
well, great, and that's something that travel can really do for us too. Every time we travel, or at least for me, I only speak for me. Every time I travel, I'm like, somehow more inspired to garden because I'm looking at, at different plants differently. I'm more observant, because everything looks different. And sometimes when I'm here in my daily thing, I forget to be as observant as I can be. And we talked in that first or second session about observation and listening, and that being so critical in any creative effort. Yeah. Any other thoughtful activities, but places where you're the most creative, and I say places, I mean really activities. Yeah. Um, let's see, at a garden center, in the kitchen, or wherever my ADD mind wanders. Yeah. Usually around water, rivers, that, and when driving. At night, driving, listening to music. Polly says it helps to try a new medium. So just becoming more creative because you're doing something in a different form. Yeah. Well, thank you. I do think that's tremendously important. And I went to this. I can be out there as anybody. So I'll just go ahead and do it. I went to this Mystic Action Camp one summer, and it was pretty fascinating. And there were some hermits there, people who really shut themselves away, and meditation was part of it. But any creative, to me, when I'm creative and I'm kind of in that zone, it's kind of meditative state. I don't think running's quite meditative, but it does put me in a different place. So I'm very creative then. But the main point of that whole experience was to say, you've got to do those things, and you've got to shut yourself off, and you've got to be in your creative zone. You've got to do those things, even if sometimes it feels like you're, sometimes honestly, I grew up with the sense of that it was indulgent, that I should be, I should be doing things, accomplishing, things that other people determined what they were. I should be challenged myself in different ways. But the importance of shutting yourself off, and knowing where that space is, and having that contemplative space in order to be better able to engage when you emerge from it, and more capable to listen, to observe, to act, and to act in a way that benefits others. So I'm constant. Unfortunately, I think all of mine are very alone places. So I can shut myself off a lot, being running, reading, writing, being out in the yard. But this is restorative to me too. I always end up coming out of these conversations energized. So I do acknowledge that, and I hope that we can, keep fostering this network as we engage in projects and provide support for each other and learn from each other in a way that's going to keep energizing us to do it and to do more. All right, let's see. I'm going to share my screen again, and we'll move on. Microsoft PowerPoint. All right. Okay, so our next calls, remember we announced last time, we talked about them. I still haven't posted them online because I'm trying to finalize a few things. We might bring in another one. I had a good conversation today about that. I think I'll have a meeting late this week. But we want to keep digging into them and thinking about them. But when we do it, we want to do it right. Plus, on Monday, I'll present all this to City Council, and so it'll be good for City Council to know about it as we're doing these things. And they do know about it. They approved the grant when we applied for it. But I'm looking forward to telling them what you're all doing and what you're all up to. And so today we're going to talk about. Let's see. Make sure there. Yeah, we're going to do two: the Complete Streets team and Roanoke Valley Sister Cities. And we're going to start with Roanoke Valley Sister Cities, and Mary Jo Fossier is here, and I've got some slides pulled up for her already. And Mary Jo, I'll ask you to unmute, and I'll let you do a couple of things as you get going. You know what the slides are, but I'd love to hear about you and how you got involved in Roanoke Valley Sister Cities and what you're doing.
Okay, thanks, Doug, for inviting me. It's been a long journey with Roanoke Valley Sister Cities. I first got involved as a French teacher. For any of you who know me, I taught for 35 years in Roanoke City, but for a total of 40 years French. So when I saw in the newspaper that they were going to start a sister city with Saint-Lô, France, my husband, actually it was Pierre, who said, well, you should join that. You should get involved. So he kind of pushed me into it. And then I became eventually chairman of the Saint-Lô Sister City, took 5 trips to France. And then in 2015, my daughter Vanessa was going to have a baby. And so I decided, well, it's time to retire. And so I started taking care of that baby, who's now going to be 7 years old pretty soon, and his sister, part-time, sharing with the other grandmother. And so I'm doing Sister Cities kind of full-time now, I guess you could say, as chairman of president of Sister Cities. Voila. So we'll move on then. So what is Sister Cities? We do have a website, and there you can see our website. So check it out if you're interested in that. This slide just shows you what is Sister Cities. Most of you know that it has to do with building partnerships across the globe, and also strengthening relationships with people across the globe. And also, this is not stated in here, but also introducing your own community to what is Sister Cities or culture in other countries. And then this slide, of course, is from our website, a little propaganda here. Why join Roanoke Valley Sister Cities? Of course, getting involved with all kinds of projects. You might be interested in getting involved with Kasumu, who's working on a water project right now with Kasumu, and they're starting to raise funds, and it's taking a lot of time to do that. They had to study the water table and all those kinds of things, but it is moving forward now. Or you might be interested in visiting once everything opens up one of our sister cities, and we do trips. And you can also go on your own if you don't like to go with groups and get involved that way. Or you could be an artist that visits one of our countries. And if you don't like to travel, then if we have an artist or a visitor from one of our sister cities, you might want to host them. So there's a myriad of possibilities with sister cities, whether it's locally that you, once we can start doing some of our local events, one of which was very popular was a polka event that we did 2 or 3 years in a row. And that was dance. We had a polka band coming from Ohio, but they're authentic polka. They were a young group too, a lot younger than I am. And they did wonderful polka music and also rock and roll and all kinds of things. And the Taubman let us use their space, and we had lots of people attend those events. So maybe you'd like to do something like that once we start that up again, if you like to dance. So lots of things to get involved. And here's our brochure. So it kind of shows you all of our different cities, and we are on 4 different continents. And we started with Gwangju, as many you know, and that's why we have the name of the street, Gwangju. And we have little by little increased our sister cities. The last one was Saint-Lô in France, which got me involved. And we tried to do delegations, whether it be just the chairman and a few other people going, or big delegations, which I have led quite a few of those to France. We stay in homes in many of the countries. Sometimes you stay in a hotel if it's, for instance, in China or some other countries that they prefer that. Whereas if you go to France, you'll be in someone's home, if that's okay with you, and you really get to know the culture of the area. So that's a lot about our sister cities. We also have other exchanges, which we are affiliated with the Carilion School of Medicine, Virginia Tech Carilion School of Medicine, and we have 4 medical exchanges, which have been on hold for right now. And Dr. Lehrman, who's Dean of the Medical School, is part of our Sister Cities board. So we have medical exchanges that should start up in 2023. Again, with Apoli, Poland, and Florianopolis, Brazil, and Saint-Lô, France, and in South Korea with Gwangju. And we receive students from them who come and they follow along the doctors at the hospital. And then we do the same type of thing. They have sent students who are in their last year of medical school, usually in the spring, but sometimes in the fall. And they go there for 3 weeks. So lots of different things. And what's coming up right now is our young artist showcase, and we just do the visual arts portion of this. And that is held every year. And this is the theme that comes down from Sister Cities International. So if you have any young artists out there between the ages of 13 and 18 that would like to submit art for this competition, and there is prize money. First place is $300, and then it goes down from there. And we usually give several honorable mentions, and sometimes there's ties because we can't really decide. So we give out a lot of money for this competition. And the deadline for Roanoke portion of this is going to be March 18. So if you're interested, email me at Roanoke Valley Sister Cities at gmail.com, and I will surely get you involved with this. We're kind of asking, I had sent out to all the art teachers, I hope, or I sent out to the county, Salem, the city, Botetourt, you know, all the areas, information about this. So I'm hopefully they have shared it if any of you are art teachers in the Valley with you. If they haven't, shame on them. And we're hoping that we get quite a few entries, and it's going to be virtual this year as it was last year. And then hopefully then next year we'll be able to have it as set up. We did it once at the library. We did it once at a gallery, or 2 times at a gallery, and people could come in and view it, and it is judged by artists in the community.
And,
So March 18.
and Dan commented in the chat, he's a teacher in Roanoke City Schools, and he saw it.
Good.
So it's gotten out there.
All
And
right.
yeah, and there's some, you know, of course, we've got such talented young artists in the community. Some really great work.
Right.
And
So if you all are at Roanoke Arts Pop, which I will be there. Yes,
and
I'll be there, or some of my representatives on our board will be there Saturday and Sunday. So stop by if you want some information. I'll have flyers there for that. And if you want to see last year's winners, we should be able to have space to put those up too as well.
And then are you going to have your quiz that you had last year?
Oh, yes. Come by and do the quiz. And if you're, if you're like, Doug, you'll get a perfect score and
I
a
did.
tote
I
bag.
never get a perfect score, but I did on this one. I'm still proud of it. You can tell.
Yeah, so come by to do that. It's fun. It's outdoor art. Can you figure out what country it's in? So it's just like a matching,
Yeah,
you know, and the answers are on the back. So if you get,
I didn't look at them. I didn't look at them, but it is
oh,
fun.
you
But
didn't.
No, I didn't look at them. Yeah, but it was public art. It was public art around the world. I loved it.
Yeah.
It's a really good, a really fun event,
Yeah.
or something to do. And so Mary Jo, we were talking a little bit about what what might be happening coming up that an artist in residence that they attached to your organization might do. You want to talk a little bit, even though we don't know, quite part of the idea. Of course, we've talked about this. Is the artist comes in, attend some meetings. They could attend some of the city committee meetings. They could attend some organizational meetings, learns what's happening,
Right.
and then designs a project. But what are some thoughts of what you think you have coming up in the coming year?
Right. So actually, these are things that we had started before the pandemic. And then since we couldn't bring anybody in because of the pandemic, we held on to these ideas. So first of all, we contacted Holland University, and they would like to sponsor an artist from Opole, Poland. And they will lodge the artist and give him or her space to work and maybe do some art on plein air and that kind of a setup. So we are really excited about that. So and also with Roanoke College, we hopefully will bring an artist from Florianopolis, Brazil, and do the same kind of thing. So this is with the galleries on each of the campuses that will be sponsoring these artists. And the Taubman envisioned also bringing an artist from Lijiang, China, because when Joe Cobb was in Lijiang, China in 2018, I think, he met an artist and was really interested in his artwork, and his wife is a photographer. And so we would like to bring both of them here with their daughter, who's also a budding artist. And he has done an artist in residency in Canada. So we're hoping that the government of China will, once things are all okay to travel, will give him permission to come. So these things may be coming up in the year of the artist, or maybe a little bit afterwards. So just depending on those governments and when they will allow the artist to travel.
Yeah, so there could be some great thinking about those artists as they come into the community. How do we welcome them? How do we pull them into the arts community and make them feel part of it? So there would be that aspect of it. And then additionally, we've got some beautiful public art in the community in Century Plaza that are the sculptures that represent our sister cities, and they're along intermixed with the ginkgo trees. We've got that. I think it's one of my favorite public spaces in the community. I think it's beautiful, but I'm not sure that we do a great job of interpreting. There's one sign there. But we've got an opportunity to potentially do a little bit more. There used to be Dan Keel, who's on the call. He had a chalk wall that was there that people loved, and we had a good life there. That's being moved over to another location. So we have a frame there. And there might be a way to do something that's interactive and engages the community in our sister cities. But so those are some of the things that might be out there that the artists can explore.
Yes, we'd really like that, because when what you noted, Doug, and I have noted also, is when you're walking along Church Street, and you might just walk right by that space because the sign is all the way on the other end, rather than being at the beginning to kind of explain to you what this space is about. And I like Catherine inspired me at the beginning here when she was talking about puppet shows. Now, wouldn't it be cool if we did puppet shows, maybe one a month, and it would be featuring some legend or something from one of our different countries?
See, look, this is the kind of creativity that we hope we can, bring to organizations and goals of the city. I love it. I love that thinking.
Yeah, and I'll also add that Apollo Poland has a large puppet community. So, Catherine, if you ever want to travel, maybe we could send you to Apollo because their puppetry is quite amazing.
Excellent. Well, let me see if there are any questions for Mary Jo. Right, I'm watching the chat. All right. Well, thank you, Mary Jo. Really appreciate that look at the organization.
Mhm.
All right. And then now I'm going to stop my share. I'm going to make, and let's see, where did it go? Let's see, participants. Okay, here it is, Wayne. And Wayne, you are now the host and you can share your slides. And so Wayne Leftwich is our senior planner in the city and is the lead on our Complete Streets effort, which has impressed me. And so Wayne, thanks for being here with us.
Yeah, glad to be here. And so excited to talk about Complete Streets a little bit. And I just wanted to thank Mary Jo for all the great work that she does at Sister Cities, because I do think that citizen diplomacy is just so important. And we see, I think even more now, we see why that is important this time. But I want to talk about Complete Streets, and I'll let you in on a secret. So I'm a planner, and city planners are jack of all trades, but masters of none. But what we are really good at is finding the right information. And so I borrowed some slides that they actually allow us to use from Smart Growth America and the National Complete Streets Coalition, because they are the experts on this, and there was no reason to reinvent the wheel. But the idea of Complete Streets is about making streets, designing them in a way that they are safe for everyone, no matter who they are and how they travel. And that's pretty simple. And I love this picture right here. It really says it all. You know, you have a guy on a bicycle, you have someone in a wheelchair, you have some dogs walking, you have a bus, you have a bus stop, you have cars, you have crosswalks. Those are the sort of things we're talking about. Is how do we allow all users to use the space and make sure that it's safe, comfortable, convenient for people that are older, people that are younger, people with all sorts of abilities. And it's why do we do it is because people want freedom of travel. They want to be able to choose how they get around. So this is an older poll, 2010, but 66% of Americans wanted more transportation options. 73% currently felt they had no choice but to drive as much as they do. And 57% would like to spend less time in the car. And I'm sure most of us here could, feel in alignment with that. As a matter of fact, when we did work on our comprehensive plan, we did some surveys and asked people similar questions. And we asked people in the city who lived in the city or worked in the city what their primary means of transportation was. And I mean, overwhelmingly, people use a car, right? 95%. And people walk and bike occasionally too and use transit, but overwhelmingly they use a car. But we then asked them what their preferred means of transportation was. And the car went down to 80%. So there's 15% of the population roughly that would take other means of travel if they could. But we asked them, well, why don't you? And, there were things about convenience of the bus schedule, bus stops, location of routes. But a lot of it was about sidewalks, bike lanes, that sort of infrastructure that allows people to get around in different ways. And that's what Complete Streets seeks to solve, because there's a lot of potential there. Of all the trips taken in the US, and this was even older, in 2009, 50% of them were less than 3 miles. And if you live in the city, that number is probably, if you live in the city around it, that number is probably way higher. Because, I think I realized during the COVID time frame that I don't think I ever left the 3 mile bubble from my house, but maybe 2% of the time. All my trips I was, I worked 3 miles from my house. My other office during COVID times was at an apartment that my mother-in-law has. That was 3 miles from my house. So, between Tanglewood and downtown and Brandon Court was sort of my 3-mile bubble. So lots of trips can be made within that 3 miles. And that's important because that's a very comfortable bike ride. So really for just about anybody, once you start doing it, if you have the right facilities to support that. And 28% of trips were less than 1 mile, which is a very comfortable walk. But still, even with those trips within a mile, 60% of them were driven. So that's why it's important. Because incomplete streets are unsafe. More than 40% of pedestrian deaths in 2007, 2008 occurred where there was no crosswalk available. And unfortunately, in this COVID time, although driving numbers went down, the number of vehicles went down, speeds have gone up, and unfortunately, pedestrians and bicycle deaths have also risen all across the country. So this is still very relevant. Incomplete streets are inadequate, and they're unsafe. And it affects people that are most vulnerable, children, elderly people, people of low income communities, and people of color statistically more prone to accidents on the streets. But we know how to do them right. And they're great examples of building streets that slow down traffic, that accommodate different uses, that allow for safe crossings. But unfortunately, we don't always do it. And we end up with things like this. So that's why the city has had a complete streets policy for many years now to ensure that we are planning and designing our right-of-ways as best we can to be safe for all users. So that could be anything from sidewalks on residential streets to well-functioning main streets. And using new tools, we have some new tools now with the concepts of protected bike lanes that we're seeing in many cities, roundabouts that we've seen even within the city. And of course, that you couldn't talk about complete streets without before-after pictures. So just to give you some ideas, here's a before picture of a 4-lane road with parking on each side. And then after, they sort of take that to 1 lane going each direction. So just 2 lanes of traffic, a center turn lane and bike lane. So you're accommodating a lot more users. Here's an example from New York City. This is a giant 1-way road. We've got 3 lanes, 1 way. They went in, made it 2 lanes 1 way with keeping the parking, but then did a protected bike lane. But we even have local examples. So I have some better pictures, but this is what I was able to find on the fly. Just to the south here on the screen is Memorial Avenue, and this is Grandin Road. And as you can see, it used to be quite wide, at least in this section. We had a lot going on. And we went back and really got rid of some of that pavement, did some appropriate crosswalks. We brought out the curb in different places to shorten this length to cross the street, and really made it a pedestrian-friendly location, as most of you probably are familiar with Grandin Village. And so there's lots of ways to coordinate these infrastructure changes with art. And oftentimes you'll see people will paint crosswalks differently. But I will say that our transportation division is not really keen on that idea. Or they perhaps could be talked into it, but it would have to be, a unique situation. There were issues originally with safety of some of those painted crosswalks. I think that's been resolved a little bit as the paint technology has gotten better. but I think there's still an issue that they're not as well recognized as crosswalks. So you think you paint a crosswalk, maybe it would be safer, but it may actually be, the numbers point to it may be the opposite. I know the transportation folks sometimes don't like that, but there are other ways to add art. This picture here shows curb extensions that were put in an intersection. You can imagine before these painted areas were put in, these curb extensions. I mean, this was a lot of asphalt, a lot of cars doing a lot of different things. And so they put in these curb extensions to really sort of slow traffic, really get people to slow as they make these particular turns. And they added some art as part of that. This is Kansas City. This is Nashville, I think, if I remember right. And they did something similar where they had a space, sort of a no man's land at a busy intersection, and they were able to make it more of a park plaza, if you will, by using art. And then, although we don't have a lot of protected bike lanes here that use these Jersey barriers, but this is an example of where they do, and they have these Jersey barriers, these big concrete separators that are often quite ugly and industrial looking. But this was a project in New York City that has a lot of really good examples of really cool art along all these Jersey barriers. So there's lots of different ways that art could be involved in sort of some of these infrastructure things. But the idea of complete streets is really quite simple, just to make sure that the streets are designed and built for all users. And we're constantly trying to improve the streets that we have. And as we have new projects, we're trying to make sure they meet that goal as we go forward. Are there any questions on that? Or did I spur any creative ideas? I see some chat comments, but I didn't keep up with it. Let's see. Oh, no.
There was a question, what is the plan to make the residential streets safe?
Yeah, so residential streets for the most part tend to be safe. It does depend on the residential street. They're all a little different, but a lot of our city streets, we do have sidewalks. That we're fortunate that when a lot of the city was developed, we were putting sidewalks in our neighborhoods. And with parking on the residential streets, a lot of times that will slow down vehicular traffic. Now that's not true everywhere. And so we definitely have some areas of the city that were annexed in later or developed at a later time that did not put in sidewalks. So the city is continually putting in new sidewalks and maintaining the sidewalks we have, but we'll probably never get sidewalks on every street in the city, certainly not for many decades. We've got a long list, but we do try to make the connections from the neighborhoods to areas where they need to go. The big focus of our comprehensive plan was on neighborhood centers. So I mentioned Grandin Village earlier. That's probably an easy to think of example. I would say Main Street and Wasena is another good example. There's a lot of areas in our city that, although they haven't redeveloped their neighborhood centers, they have the structures there, the backbone, if you will, of those neighborhood centers existing. So we want to continue to make connections through the neighborhoods to those locations. So that's important as we focus on adding new sidewalks. But I don't know if there's a particular piece of the residential street that you were interested in making safe. Yeah.
I actually have a question. How much does lighting figure in regards to that?
Yeah, lighting's an important part of it too, particularly as you have a neighborhood center or a more active area. Lighting's important. Someone asked.
Roanoke's got a lot of very dark spots, I've noticed, and it's like I would imagine would have an effect in regards to that.
Yeah, and we do streetscape projects. If you think of Memorial Avenue, coming from Grandin Village, going towards the west end, crossing Memorial Bridge, that was a streetscape project that was done just a handful of years ago, 6, 7 years ago. And lighting was a component of that. It was really important to light up that area a little bit. So we do try to make sure we do have appropriate lighting. We're doing a project now on Melrose, 24th to, I guess it's 22nd, somewhere a few blocks there. And we have lighting as a component of that as well, because it is, as we do new streetscape projects, lighting is very important.
Well, the only reason I'm thinking of that is if you have hot spots like that, you also have the potential for any sort of showcase or stage or anything that could, where you could hang something or create something that was more communal, which I think might also factor in just in regards to thinking in terms of lighting and what you're trying to do here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's really impressive to me when they are about to make an investment with, even if a small part of the street, and redo it. They have a whole team that comes together, and it's transportation and it's planning. Anybody and they invite me in there, and I'm the arts and culture guy. And they look at it and look for opportunities. Where can we put more trees in? Where can we make this a better experience for the pedestrian? Where can we increase connectivity? What are the opportunities? Which is a cool way to look at it. And I mentioned that book. There was an example in this book, Designing Creative Communities, of what they call it tactical urbanism, where you kind of demonstrate something, and artists can get involved in that demonstration. The example here was, marking off a bike lane using toilet plungers.
Right.
And I don't think they were working as closely with their community when they did it, but to demonstrate how a bicycle lane could be marked off and made safer. So there's, I think there is lots of opportunity Molly said love this. I think she was talking about the painted kind of islands of concrete. And the city manager, we've applied twice now for an asphalt art grant to do an intervention like that. And I'm not sure if we would end up, they asked the crosswalks could be part of it, but certainly some of the infrastructure around the kind of an ugly pass-through area we were looking at. And we still have, actually we applied twice for the asphalt art program. We applied once for the Our Town grant, and that grant is still out there. So there is support for the city, from the city, to look creatively at this. And so an artist in residence as part of the Complete Streets team would be able to get in there and ask questions of members of the team, of city leadership, and kind of dig into goals and challenges, and who knows what kind of project would happen. So yeah, any other questions for Wayne?
I see someone mentioned extending the bus schedule, and I don't have an announcement about extending the bus schedule, but I that would be great. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, that's, in addition to the actual physical infrastructure investments, there are these policies and changes that can be made that better connect transportation for people who need to get to work, people who need to get to get children to childcare. But that's that aspect of who's at the table helping to make decisions, whose voices are being heard, whose experiences are we really considering is in the decision making process. So yeah, Polly, that'd be the kind of question that artists in residence would pop up with, I think. Yeah. And all right. Well, thank you very much, Wayne. Really appreciate you sharing that with us tonight.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
All right. And then let me just check we're getting here toward the end. And I think, let me see if they'll let me share it, or you're the host now, Wayne. So it may, oh yeah, it's going to let me do it. Oh no, host disabled it. You have to make me the host now if I'm going to share a screen, but I don't necessarily need to. just don't hang up on us, Wayne, because you might end our call. So we've got a timeline. We said that, May to August, we're going to get the cohort training going for the artists in residence. In August, September, October, do the listening and then develop a project. And that project, you'd have probably the good spring months most likely. And that's the best time to do some of these projects. If it's an indoor project, it can certainly happen during the winter. But we want to do it over the course of the year of the artist. And then, really that cohort is going to be learning lessons together. We're going to do deeper training with that cohort. We'll probably invite everybody in, but we'll kind of require that the cohort of artists and residents get involved in that deeper training. And that might be when we dig into the artists in the community, or the handbook for artists working in community. And then let's see here. The Soul Box, I don't know if Kyle's on, but Kyle was going to take a trip on the 3rd. Kyle on? I don't think so, but follow up with Kyle Edgell if you're interested in that Soul Box effort. The origami, the Safer Neighborhoods Committee of the Gun Violence Task Force is working on the Soul Box project, making origami boxes to acknowledge lives lost to gun violence. And that project's going to be happening, coming up soon. They're kind of in the shaping space of that now. But contact Kyle Edgell if you're interested in that. The Eleanor D. Wilson Museum has some photography events happening now. So if one of those things that helps make us more creative, of course, even if we're not a photographer, like digging into, a different medium and looking at a creative process with a different light. They're going to do a curator's lecture, and, there's going to be an artist talk and a tin type demonstration. So check out the Eleanor D. Wilson website online. The exhibit itself is going to be up through April 24th, but there's going to be a lecture this Thursday, March 3rd at 6 p.m. by Zoom that you can attend if you're interested in that. And that's the exhibit is what photography is. So it's looking at a lot of different kinds of photography. And then of course, Arts Pop coming up March 4th through 6th. You got to come and do the public art around the world quiz, because you too will get 100 on it. I am sure of it. And we've still got the Arts Matters calls out, and those are that first round's due March 8th. We are now I've got the self-portrait project. We have all of the applicants, the information in front of the panel. We have a panel of, I think, 5 people who are reviewing those. And so we should be able to come back to you, I hope, March 8th, which is next week. It is a lot of information. You remember how many questions we asked? If anybody here participated, there are a lot of questions. And we gave all that information to the panel. And I talked to a panelist today. She said, wow, that's a lot. And then she said, but it's so interesting seeing who's in the community around us and cares about the community. So that'll be, so that's March 8th. And then of course, the Inspired Grants. Remember, you can apply for, you can go out and do an experience, a cultural experience that's going to help fuel your creativity, and we'll pay for it. So up to $100 for 2 people to go to an event. And if you've got it in the budget, even $20 for your babysitter, transportation, or a snack. And with that, are there any other questions, anything we need to address tonight before we adjourn? See, Catherine, were you saying something?
I'm just saying, is this the last of the meetings?
No. Oh no, I do have one more slide that says next week we'll do some more of these artist in residence overviews. So I think next week we'll hear from Neighborhoods of Opportunity, Berglund Center. Robin, who runs Berglund Center, is going to talk with us about that one. So we'll probably have 3 or 4 of those, and then we'll probably have that ready to push out next week.
Okay, so next week is the last of the Zoom meetings, and then we'll talk about how to get together, possibly COVID-friendly gathering.
Maybe it's the last. We'll keep doing these until we run out of things to say. But probably next week I was going to do a poll tonight and find out how comfortable people are about meeting in person. So maybe we'll start next week with that poll. We'll see how that is and we'll make a decision. I know we can find a space easily. We can meet in one of the city spaces, or we can meet in an art space in the community. And I would love to. We even there's some exercises that are part of that Artists in the Community Development Table that we can get together and kind of dig into and have some more of the same kind of conversation, but in person. And it can be a little bit. This feels really structured, I know, and we're all getting tired of Zoom. So we'll talk about that next time. And if you have any thoughts or recommendations for me, please do. You can just email them to me, and we'll wrap that in. And thank you, those of you who've been emailing information for other members. That's the kind of exchange that we can do when we get together as well. All right, so we'll see you one more time next week by Zoom, and then we'll have our plan warming up. All right, anything else? Terrific. Well, thank you, everybody. We appreciate your time and being here, and enjoyed spending the time with you.